Hello patrons and welcome back to another tutorial. So today I'm going to be showing how I'm going to bead set some sapphires and emeralds into this gold ring. And I figured I would break it down in the simplest way possible. So right now I've just got my seats cut and they're evenly spaced and I haven't cut away any metal to leave beads yet. So what I'm going to do is actually color in with a Sharpie just along the edges so I can really highlight where I'm cutting, so that you guys can see what metal I end up cutting away. Because it can be hard to show, especially when the metal is bright. It reflects in the camera a little bit and it can just be really hard to see. So this is going to really just highlight everything so that when I cut away, you'll see what is left. Because whenever I'm bead setting, I start out with just metal surrounding the seats on all sides, and I cut away a little bit, leaving a tiny little bead in between each stone that I'll push over. Now I'm going to use a graver to cut in between these, but you can use a cross burr like I've showed in other videos, or even just a round burr. Just make sure this is locked in. But really just anything, I'm just removing the metal from in between. Alright, so I'm going to go right ahead and cut around the edges, also just cutting the one bead here at the end. Now since I've got enough room, what I'm probably going to do is just cut one line all the way along the back first. I'll cut one on the other side. Now, it's important to take your time with rings too, because inherently, because they're curved, the graver is going to want to slip when you get to a certain point, so it's always good to adjust. So I'm just cutting the one bead at the end here again. Okay, so from here you can see I've got the middle cut out and then a line on either side. And the way I'm going to cut away the metal for these beads is angling up my graver and plunging down into the bottom corner of the seat. So I'll demonstrate that right here. So I'm starting, this is where the bead is going to be, and I'm going to start right behind, directly behind it, and angle my cut away so that I'm leaving a little bit of metal right here. And I'm also, this is a 120-degree carbide graver, I'm angling it slightly to the side so that I cut parallel to to that line that I cut. So you can see that the edge of the graver is kind of cutting away right there. I'll demonstrate it here again. And I'm going to go ahead and just do that on all of them in this one direction. And you can play with the angles and see what feels most comfortable to you. Sometimes, you know, I'll do a cut like that, and then I'll kind of go back and angle it slightly more to one or the other side if it's, you know, if it's cutting not right where I want it to be. But so I do that all down the line with every seat that I'm cutting. And I'm starting my cuts all in that groove that I cut before, all in this straight line here. So it gives me a nice starting point. And so once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Same exact thing, starting right in the back of the bead and then plunging into that bottom corner. And so now you can see that there's just starting to be just this one little part of metal being left. And I'm going to have to go back and cut on the other sides as well. But it saves time to just do all the same angles when you can. So I know I've got to do all of these. Okay, so I've cut all of the angles going that direction, so what I'm going to do is turn the ring around and do the same thing going back in the other direction. So you can see the bead is starting to take shape, and as soon as I start cutting back, same thing, I'm starting in the back corner and plunging down into the bottom of the seat. And when I do that, oops, got my flex shaft there. You can see that it's starting to leave just kind of a little diamond shape of metal that is going to be my bead. So you can see just this little part here. And I might clip off that end just a little bit with the graver, just cut a little bit more off. And so this is going to be what I push over the stone, this little bead. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the other sides of all of my other beads just to show you guys. So a really important thing to note is don't cut off too much of the bead. Now, sometimes, you know, when you haven't placed your stones yet, you might need to enlarge the seat a little bit, you know, meaning that this hole might be a little bit small for your stone. So when you go to place your stone, you need to increase the size of your hole ever so slightly with a burr. And if you haven't left enough metal for the bead, it can be a real pain trying to get it to set. And you'll probably wish you left a little metal there. So you can always take more off later, but leave more on there than you think you're going to need. Always worth it in the end. Alright, I'm going to cut the rest of these and we'll check back in. And then a little trick too for cleaning up the outside edge is just going in with a silicone wheel and just running that in between where you cut your bead and that little border. And it's key not to leave it too long because you don't want to just put a big groove there. Just enough to just kind of polish and leave a little Just kind of smooth out any inconsistencies. And no matter what, after you've cut your beads, you got to go back into that seat you cut and just clean up, because you'll push a little bit of metal in there. Even if it's just a teeny bit. So it's always good to go back in and clean it up. So once I start putting my stones in, and you can see I've only put in, a little bit more than half, because when the ring starts curving over this far, if I don't lock them in, they're just going to fall out when I go to set them. So I'm going to start setting on this end, and you can see that I've just left a little bit of metal. All that metal that we cut away, I've just left this little bit in between each one. And so that's what I'm going to push over the stone. So for any confusion that any of you guys have had, this is all it is. I'm just leaving a little bit. It's essentially just a prong. And the way I set them usually is I start at the end and then I alternate. So picking either side from that point is starting here, then here, and I switch back and forth. And then at some point I'll go back and I'll do the opposite sides. And that just allows me to kind of get all the beads starting to curve over without putting too much pressure on one side of the stone, which can in turn make the stone tip slightly. So that's just my technique, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Now at this stage, I'm also mostly just getting it started. And I'll go back and always kind of double check on my beads and put a little bit more pressure as I go. But just when I'm starting out, I'm just trying to get the metal to start going over the stone without putting too much pressure, so that I can go back and follow up afterwards. But you can see I'm doing this staggering effect. And really at any point you can start going back and filling in the other sides. But what you'll notice if you do a lot of bead setting is that if you don't do this staggering, or if you do too much pressure on one side, what ends up happening is the stone will just it'll get tilted, and it's almost impossible to right it again. And especially when you have a bunch of stones lined up like this, it can be kind of obvious if one of them is tilted. And you don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do all the rest of them just like this. I'm going to stagger, and then I'm going to set the other stones in, and then I'll add a little bit more pressure and finish up the beads. So once I've added the other stones and pushed over my beads, that's pretty much it. Now I'll go ahead and polish this. But for any of you that were wondering about bead setting, or this is technically thread setting because there's two beads, and each bead is shared, meaning this one bead is touching two stones. So this is thread set. You can also call it bead setting or partial pavé, but either way, this is how it's done. I hope that helps clear up any questions you guys have, and let me know if you still have any questions or how it goes. Either way, talk to you soon.